I must admit that many times in my life, I have a challenge on making decisions. And the more you're able to make decisions and as quickly as you can on issues, the quicker you settle them and the quicker you move into the direction that you'd want to go. Now, this is Now Tell Us you're listening to. I am your host, Anthony Muirore. At Now Tell Us, we have guests come and tell us stories. They come and inspire us. They come and educate us on a subject. And it's always a wonderful time on this show, every episode. And when I say every episode, today we have a special guest. Her name is Emily Sander, and she's going to be here shortly talking to us about how to become a more confident decision maker. How about that? Now, before we go to meet Emily, I would like to remind you to please share this episode with all your friends. If you have a question, ask. If you have any comment to make on any of our episode or the whole podcasters or whole, please give us feedback and we'll appreciate you. We thank you in advance as you do so. So, just as a reminder, this is Now Tell Us, and I'm your host, Anthony Muirore, a motivational speaker and author. I've authored the book known as Be Good for Good, that has got stories of goodness with lessons on life, and also the Achieve Your Dream workbook that has got the 7 ingredients for success. And you can find them on Amazon. But please don't go now to Amazon. You can always go later, because now we have Emily who's going to tell us about becoming a more confident decision maker. So why don't you join me as we go and meet Emily together? Here we go. Hello, Emily.
Hello, hello. I'm going to try to live up to that awesome, intense introduction music.
uh, this is for you. This is specially for you because you're the special person.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Where in the world are you, by the way?
So I'm just north of Seattle, Washington. So we live in a place called Anacortes, and it's like this cute little fishing village, and it's built up just north of Seattle.
That's cool. I love fish. Uh, and to know that you're close to a fishing village, that makes
Yeah.
me envious. So, do you love fish yourself, or what is your favorite food, if I may ask?
Ooh, I do like fish.
Uh,
What is my favorite? That's too hard. I like all food. Let's see. I definitely like good Asian food, so Japanese sushi. I like really good Mexican food, not greasy kind of chain stores, but like really good Mexican food, and then like really good Thai food. I like too. We also have there's a place in Anacortes that serves amazing Italian, like fresh bread, fresh olive oil, fresh everything. So that's one of our favorite spots to go to.
and with all those kind of foods that you've told us, are you from there, by the way, or you moved there? Or are you born and brought up there?
In Anacortes, so I was born in Seoul, South Korea, and then
Okay.
I was adopted as a baby and raised in Seattle.
Oh, okay. So you have quite a wide range of experience.
Yes, you could say that. Yes.
What's your profession? What have you been doing all this while?
Yeah, what have I been doing my whole life? So I was in the working the corporate career for about 15 years, and that started with places like Microsoft and Amazon. I was a tester for the original Kindle device, and then I worked a series of like smaller to medium technology companies, and that's where I got into leadership, and I ended up as a chief of staff for a digital marketing company. And about 18 months, 2 years ago, I transitioned to my coaching practice full time. So executive leadership coaching. And those were the elements that I really enjoyed out of all of my corporate roles. And so I thought, oh, if I can wake up in the day and get to do my favorite part of the day, then that would be amazing. So that's what I tried to make happen, and am currently making happen.
And we are happy for you since you're making it happen. Many of us who would want to just wake up in every single day and we are happy at what we are doing. And I know there are many people who are listening and are wishing, oh, how could I be a free person? How could I maybe have a company? How could I be? And this word, what is a chief of staff? You
Yeah,
mentioned.
so yeah, it's a good question. So a chief of staff in business is the right-hand partner to the CEO. And
Mm-hmm,
so they are the ones who are executing the strategy across the company. So not just in operations, not just in finance, not just in technology, but across the entire organization. So they work for the CEO, and then they also work very closely with the executive team. Some analogies that I like to use to explain it at a high level. One is, when you go to the store and you buy the 6-pack can of soda, and
mm-hmm.
there's that plastic thing on top of the cans that holds it all together. The plastic thing is the chief of staff because it holds the leadership team together and makes sure that they're marching in the same direction and they're working together. The other analogy I'd use is like an air traffic controller.
Mm-hmm.
So at an airport, when you have that big tower and it's directing all the airplanes, all the airlines, all the ground crew, all of the safety crew, all of these things, that's like a chief of staff orchestrating everyone across the company. So a chief of staff will be working with the executive team and on company-wide initiatives.
And that's a role that you've played for. You played for several years. How many years?
I was in that role for a bit, and then now I coach chiefs of staff. So a lot of chiefs of staff and executives who have a chief of staff on their team will come to me for chief of staff coaching.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Let's find out from one of our guests. Hey, Mishka, are you a chief of staff or do you know a chief of staff? Mishka is one of the people is listening to us right now. And to all those people out there who are listening to us, thank you very much for being here with us. We appreciate your presence. And if you can tell us from where you're watching us from or listening to us, we'll be glad. Otherwise, let's find out whether we have chiefs of stars among us as we get to learn about this important role. Now, that is a role that requires a lot of decision making, as I can tell.
Yes, yes, for
Yeah,
sure.
and this is why we have you here with us. And thank you for coming. You're gonna dive us into that now. This conversation is going to focus more on something that I saw on your profile, which is a book known as Hacking Executive Leadership by Emily Sander. Maybe you can start us there and then drive us into any direction you would want us to know how to make decisions.
Certainly. So I think the best framework from the my first book, Hacking Executive Leadership, is three circles. So
Mm-hmm,
the way three circles works is you have circle one plus circle two equals circle three. So the way it works is, and this is a framework to help you make better decisions. So circle one is the external event. So something happens. Maybe you get a certain email at work, or maybe you're leading a team meeting and something happens. So that external event is circle one. And then you actually skip to circle three for a second and you say, okay, what is my desired outcome? What is my favorable outcome? What do I want to have happen here? And then once you define that, you take a step back, you kind of, you know, which actions you say something or you don't say a certain do in circle two is trying to get you to circle three. So circle one plus circle two equals circle three. So like a very quick example in a business setting, let's say I'm leading a team meeting, and all of a sudden someone like Joe over here decides to like start complaining and starts to get louder and starts saying this meeting is stupid and no one here gets him and understands what he's going through and all this stuff, and he's disrupting the meeting. So that's circle 1. That can be the external event. So then I skip to circle 3 and I go, okay, so what do I want to have happen here? And my desired outcome is to calm Joe down and get the meeting back on track. Okay, so if that's my desired outcome, what do I need to do or say to make that happen? So in this case, it might be, let me maybe acknowledge Joe and some kernels of truth he has in his statements, but then redirect it back to the agenda of the meeting. So Joe, you sound really upset. I see you're really passionate about this topic. So am I. And in fact, we have this slated for the back half of this meeting. I wanted to use the first half to get everyone level set and on board with what we're talking about before we go into some of the details. So let me start with the introduction and redirect the meeting in that way. So that could be a quick use of 3 circles and how to make a better decision.
Oh, that's a good one. And using the circle, so that's not the only one. So you have several of them, or is that the main one that you can always use when we are dealing with such situations?
Yes, I mean, that's a great one for decision making. Another popular one is the failure loop. And so that is around reframing failure. So
Okay.
most people think, say again?
Okay. Go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, most people think of failure as a bad thing, right? Like, I don't want to fail. I don't want to be seen as a failure. But the way we grow and progress in life is you want to fail up. And so if you think about, I have a graph in the book, but there's a chain of individual loops and they're connected and the overall chain goes up and to the right. And up and to the right is the direction of progress. That's where we're all trying to head.
Mm-hmm.
But if you'll notice, there's one section of an individual loop where you go back down and to the left. And that is like, oh no, I just messed up, or oh, I made that decision and it did not go the way I intended it. Uh oh. And it's a failure event. And a lot of people stop there because they're embarrassed or they're scared or they don't know what to do. They don't want to try again. And in that moment, it's painful and it's tough, but in that moment, if you can understand where you are in the process and say, okay, I have to take a look at what I was responsible for in this event and what I can learn and take away and do differently the next time. And when you apply that to the next time, you've just propelled yourself up to the next rung on the chain of loops or the next individual chain, and you've made progress. And so if you think about it in that framework, then if you have a career of doing that, or you have a lifetime of doing that, you will progress and you will continue to grow as a person. And I always say, the quote I love around this is, I'm successful because I will fail more times than you will even try. And that's what makes me successful.
Well, that's a good one. I'll fail more times than you can ever try. Did I get it right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Now, I think Mishka should could be someone who's always also good at this, at getting decisions, because she's been a former teacher and she still refers failure as a huge
Yeah.
teachable moment, or as huge teachable moments.
Yeah.
And in that case, she agrees with exactly what you've just said.
Well, I think as a teacher, it's obviously teachable moments. And then in my world as like a leader, it's a leadership moment where, oh, okay, my team member just fell on their face at that meeting and they feel horrible about it. All right, let me help them, maybe give it some time, but in time help them see, hey, here are the good things you did in that meeting, which they probably have blown right by. And okay, yes, let's acknowledge where we went a little bit off track and what you might do differently next time, because you will be in this board meeting next time, of how you would approach that differently and help them through that process. So I think, yeah, I mean, Mishka does it in the teaching setting, but certainly in business and parenting and helping out a friend, you can use those teachable moments or those leadership moments to help others along as well.
Wow, that's a good one. teachable moment for the teachers and leadership moment for the leaders. So when I find myself that I've made a failure and I'm a leader, I don't start to think about the lesson that I'm going to take from that. I'm going to think of how I'm going to use this moment to progress forward because I'm a leader. Not for next time, but for this time. Oh, that's a cool one. I'm going to employ that wherever I'm going to be leading people because it's a cool one. Um, I came across a word swizzle. Awesome.
Mm, yeah.
Awesome. On your book. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so swizzle, it's Swizzle. So swizzle, it's if you're like, I haven't heard that word in leadership before, it's because I made that word up. And the origin of that is I was rushing around and my team had a PowerPoint deck to put together that afternoon. And I said, guys, we have the content in the three previous decks, just swizzle it together and come up with the deck for this afternoon. And so by context, they understood what I meant, which was take the relevant slides from the three previous decks and kind of reformat them, reorder them into the deck for this afternoon. So swizzling is a way to be creatively resourceful. And if you take that principle of swizzle, you can take lessons from all aspects of your life to help you. So an example would be I was in the car and I was listening to a podcast and they were interviewing Floyd Mayweather, who
Mm,
is a champion boxer. Now,
yeah.
I do not watch boxing. I don't box. I don't know anything about boxing, but they were
Hmm.
talking to him about what made him the champion. What makes you the best? Is it your training? Is it your footwork? Is it your diet? And the hosts were trying to get him to say all these different things. And Floyd Mayweather eventually said, "You know what? It's not any of those things. What makes me the champion is my adaptability, my ability to adapt to any opponent, any round, and any punch. I can do that better than anyone, and that's what makes me the champion." And I was driving and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know anything about boxing, but that absolutely applies to my world in business and leadership because you have to be adaptable. You have to be adaptable to things that are happening in the market, in your organization, in your team. At the micro level, it's am I communicating with this individual in the way that's going to be most effective and is going to land best? Okay, I figured that out. Oh, now I'm talking to this person and they communicate a different way. Can I adapt my communication style and flex it to something that's going to land well with them?" So I swizzled the concept of adaptability into my world. And it was a good reminder of, oh, that's right. I do need to espouse the sense of adaptability through my leadership in my teams.
And that's a good one. What has been one of your greatest challenge as you're reaching people the plastic that holds the six pack together, trying to give them some more wise ways, some more strengths, tips, and ideas to keep it together. What has been one of your greatest challenge?
That's a good question. There's so many ways I could answer that. I would say one of the biggest things that I've worked on for myself and also have helped others is understanding that the way you communicate is one way out of hundreds. So
Mm,
everyone has a different communication style. And I, for instance, I like things like short and sweet and to the point. Like, what's the bullet points? What's the point of this whole thing? Don't tell me this 12-hour epic story about your mom's cat's cousin's, neighbor. I don't need to know that. Just tell me like the crux of the issue. And that's fine. And that's a perfectly valid way to communicate. Some people might like to talk about what their mom's cat's neighbor's cousin did this weekend. And they like to start with that because it makes them feel like they know you and you have some rapport and you're talking about personal things. So if I'm talking to someone where that's important and I skip over that part, that could be kind of insulting and like, whoa, like you don't
mhm,
even care about me as a person. You just want to get to the point of things. Well, like, okay, I guess we can do it that way. So I think being aware of people's work styles and people's communication styles. And just by hearing this and knowing, oh, that's right, other people communicate differently than I do, is a step in the right direction. And then taking the time and curiosity to say, like, oh, like, how does this person kind of show up and what did they respond to? Or if you're in a position to ask someone, hey, how would you like this information to be conveyed? That
Mhm.
type of thing. I think really having an interest in people in that way can get you, very far. Because if you can communicate effectively to different audiences, you're going to be successful in a whole bunch of different scenarios. So I think if you're if you're wanting one skill to work on that can only give you upside in your career and in life, it would be communication.
Communication, and that's a big challenge for many people because we communicate, but then we may not be as clear to the others, to the team, to the organization, what we are communicating. We kind of imagine that they understand us, but then we don't understand ourselves. So that could be a challenge.
Yeah, it's, I'll tell you a funny story quickly about that is, I've had CEOs write, like, a very well-crafted email, like an all-company email about an important announcement, and they'll spend time, like, on the paragraphs, and should I say it this way and maybe bold this part, and they'll send it out, and then they will expect everyone in the company to have read that email word for word and
Mhm.
have it memorized. And some people maybe received the email, some people maybe opened it, some people scanned it, but very often it takes multiple communication points to really get an important message through. And so a lot of times when I work with CEOs, they're very proud of themselves because they've crafted this beautiful email and they've sent it out and they think everyone has magically absorbed all that knowledge in just the way they intended it. And often it takes multiple rounds through different methods of communication to get that message across. So I think that would be another point. You can't just say it once. If it's important, say it over and over and over again to the point where you feel like you're repeating yourself, and use different communication channels like email for some people, an all hands company call for others, maybe a smaller group, maybe Slack, all these different ways that people can absorb that information.
Mm. Now, it's not easy to come up with the decisions, and now we are talking about becoming a confident decision maker. How do we go about this without hurting people, without
Mm.
now, yeah, without hurting, or with being sure that we are being understood as you are talking here, and stand firm on our decision? How do we work around to make sure that the decisions we are making are fit, are a good thing for our company, our organization, our team?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say clarity equals success.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can be clear about something and you know what you're going after and what you're about, if you're clear on those two things, you're going to make a good decision. So we talked about the three circles and
Yeah.
defining that desired outcome. So be very clear about like what you're going after. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're talking in a company setting, like what is your strategy? Like what is your purpose for existing? Your company's purpose. I'm sure it has one, but making sure that you're clear as the leader and that all of your team members and colleagues are clear on that too, can help you say, okay, we have a decision point here. Does this one take us closer to our intended outcome, or does this one take us further away? And that
Mm-hmm.
can be a pivot point. And then it's also, what do you want to be about? So you can have a certain goal, and two people or two companies could get to that goal very different ways. So for instance, one could be full of integrity and treating their employees with respect and serving their customers in the best way possible, and that could be how they get to their goal. The second company could be one that, ooh, let's cut some corners. And I know how we could save some money. And ooh, like our contracts say this thing, but we can kind of squeeze, this money out of our customers this way. And let's hire people really cheap and grind them and burn them out and have them work like 15-hour days over and over until they drop. And that's another way to get to your goal. So it's, what is your goal? Be clear about that. And then what do you want to be about, or what are you about, and be clear on that, because that will help you determine the how to get there.
Mm. Okay, that's a good one. Mishka was a teacher. Her career as a teacher helped her in so many facets professionally, and
Yes.
personal life. Emily was a chief of staff, and her experience being a chief of staff has helped her professionally in teaching other chiefs of staff or coaching them to be effective, maybe make decisions easily. Now, you're talking to a person who's not been a teacher, so she's not had years of training and years of experimenting with the decision making. Someone who's not been a leader and is being introduced for the very first time about decision making, standing and being able to solve this situation that you describe with the three circles. How easily do we adapt to these? How are there some tricks and tips and tricks that we can apply to just be as good as we can, even without the many years that we've been training?
Sure. So one of them would be if you were talking to a friend, so
Hmm.
someone you care about, someone you want what's best for, and they were describing a similar situation, what types of clarifying questions would you ask? What type of encouragement would you give? And what would you ultimately tell your friend to do? Like, hey, I'm seeing these things and I'm hearing you say this, this, and this. I think this way might be the way to go. So sometimes because it's because it's us and we're kind of in our own heads, we have trouble being clear about things. But if we say, okay, if it was a friend, okay, and I was talking to a friend and I want what's best for them, what types of things would I have them think about or what types of things would I want to know? Let me go through that myself and then ultimately come to a decision. So that can help. I've had clients also talk about it in the third person. So they don't use the friend, but they say, Emily is thinking about whether or not to do this or this. And if she goes with option A, Emily would say this, this, and this. And for option B, Emily would say this, this, and that. And so just by talking about it in the third person, they kind of create that distance where you can put some more thought around it. And I would say another kind of prompt would be if you knew that the decision you made couldn't fail. Like it
Hmm.
was going to be a rousing success. Like it was going to be like, "Oh my gosh, 10 out of 10. Holy cow, I can't believe that went so well." What would you decide? And that can kind of help unlock a lot of the fear piece and around failure. Like, "Oh my gosh, like yes, okay. I would love to do that and I would love to go in that direction." So just different ways to kind of tilt the prism and look at things in a different way can help you kind of bust out of the different pieces you're in. And if you're sitting there going like, "I'm not a teacher, I'm not a leader, I don't like making decisions," the gut check is the simple ones. Like, okay, like what does my intuition say right now? If I had to make a call, which way am I leaning? And then go with that.
Hmm. Now you talk about coaching. You mentioned this, and do you just do it locally? Are you reaching out uh, virtually? How do you go about that, and how can people connect with you if they want to?
Yeah, certainly. So yes, almost all of my coaching is done virtually, and
Hmm.
I work with business leaders around the world. So I would say like the three buckets of clients I work with are early executives who are in a career transition. So maybe director, VP level who have gotten a new role, something like that. The second bucket would be entrepreneurs who are trying to scale their business and they've reached a plateau. And then the third bucket would be chiefs of staff or executives who work with the chief of staff. And I have a whole bunch of those at the minute as well.
And how can people get to have access to that? How can they connect with you?
Sure. The best place would just be my website. So it's www.nextlevel.coach. So
Okay.
there we have it by the magic of Anthony here. So www.nextlevel.coach. It has links to my books. It's got some free resources on there. It has a link to my podcast, which is called Leveraging Leadership. And it also has a link to schedule a call with me. So all of that good stuff is on my website.
Uh, Thank you very, very, very much, Emily, for sharing all that with us. And then now I kind of feel like I can make some decisions with confidence.
Good. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming to our show. as well as we appreciate our guests. So today I'm walking away with being a teacher and as well as a leader, and combining that wisdom that has been shared by my guests and my audience to be a good decision maker in future. Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you, Mishka, and thank you all the other people who have been with us here, or those who even get to listen to us after we are through with this episode. Thank you. So uh, leave us with a few words that we should always remember. It's something I love asking my guests when we are going. Something that we should never forget. What's that from Emily?
What's something we should never forget?
Mm-hmm.
Whew. Small wins add up faster than you think. So if you go collect your small wins every day, they add up faster than you think.
Small wins, small wins. So tomorrow, focus on a small wins as you are going to win bigger in the future, bit by bit. That's about it for today. Thank you once again, Emily. This has been your host at Now Tell Us, Anthony Morode, and together with our special guest, Emily Sander, we are saying until next time, it's bye for now. Bye.